Welcome back to Rigor and Flow with me, Aiwan.
And me, Tamanda, the show where business meets love.
And culture meets critique.
Okay, so today we have another Notes from the Margins.
Yes, and it's number 4 of our Notes from the Margins series.
Yes, so we're keeping it free-flowing again. Mm-hmm. You're bringing a thing, I'm bringing a thing, and then we're responding to a thing from the listeners.
Absolutely.
I am bringing the first thing. In all fairness, it is not a piece of content. It is a thought I had in the middle of the night one night about the algorithm and you specifically. So we're going to get into what the algorithm says about you.
And my piece is about Africa and Nigeria's first oil refinery and why that is really, really important for Africa at this moment in geopolitics and just all of the kind of crazy turmoil that the world is in right now.
Yeah, super interesting. And then finally, in the third segment, we are going to be responding to the issue of true crime and the ethics of true crime as a genre. And who really watches it? Why are they into it? And that is a direct response to a conversation we had with a commissioning exec at Audible UK, given that they put out a lot in the true crime space.
Do you watch true crime?
Yes, a lot.
And that's why it's in Notes for the Margins this week.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
We'll get into it. I have and have had some icky feelings about my love of true crime.
Okay.
Or my obsession. Let me say obsession with true crime rather than love of.
Yes.
But we'll get into it.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Roots and rigor, rigor and flow. Roots and rigor, rigor and flow. Roots and rigor, rigor and flow. Rigor and flow.
1. So you were saying something about algorithms and 3 a.m. in the morning
And you.
And me. Oh, hello. Okay, go on.
Okay, so here's the thing. Like a few weeks ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and I don't know whether it was what I'd been doing earlier. You know, when I switch on our smart TV and I select YouTube, it's obviously connected to your specific profile.
Yes.
And your watching habits are, I would say, quite wildly different to my own.
Yes.
So when
also on Netflix and every other platform.
This is why we have separate profiles.
Yes. I don't want mine contaminated by yours.
And vice versa. I do not want to watch SWAT. But anyway, I had logged into your YouTube as always. And I don't know what it was, but in the middle of the night, I woke up and I was like, you know, data always tells a story. And I always talk about this. Even if you track your bank balance, it tells you everything. What you spend on, where you've been.
Your priorities.
It will tell you stories about what is going on in your life, just tracking your bank balance.
Yeah.
And I was like, what story is it that YouTube tells me about the woman I'm married to? And how far is that story in line with who she believes she is? Mm-hmm. And I came to some conclusions. Do you?
Yeah, I think it's in line.
Okay, I want to know if you had to imagine who YouTube thinks you are.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Oh, well, I think YouTube thinks that I am a bit of an intellectual. You know, I like to think deeply on a wide range of subjects.
Such as?
Oh, you know, things to do with blackness, to do with politics, to do with, I'm trying to think what the most, like culture, society, Africa, that sort of thing. That's one side of it. I think the algorithm probably says that I love a lot of renovation. Especially those tiny stone houses in Portugal. These British people are buying up left, right and centre, renovating. I love those.
Yeah.
They make me very, very happy. My favourite being Life by Living with Ricky and Victoria, who are awesome.
And then, who are they?
They're a British couple, white British couple, and they bought a tiny stone house. Well, actually, they bought some land in Portugal that has these 2 stone houses on them, and they've been renovating them for the last couple of years. And they're just really good fun, lovely couple, good vibes, and great skill, you know?
Yeah, I've seen them over your shoulder. I actually really like them.
Yeah, and they're brilliant. Vibes. And I've got quite a few of my renovation people building cabins out in Sweden in the forests and stuff like that. And then I've got my favourite dog groomer, who I think she's called Girl with two dogs, or the girl with dogs or whatever, and she's a groomer and she's funny and she grooms all these dogs and cats and they're just cute. What else do I listen to? So all round, I would say, and then sometimes I end up in some weird corners of YouTube. I don't know how I get there, but I end up in some weird things.
From observation, all I'm saying is you sure do.
Yes, I do. So I'd say those are the three aspects of me, like deep intellectual thought, renovations, and stuff to do with pets and dogs and stuff like that. I think that's a really good...
That's a good summary.
Of me, yeah, absolutely. I'd say that.
Okay, well, it does belie somewhat my 3 a.m. panic that I was married to someone different to the person I thought I was married.
Oh, why would you even wake up and suddenly think that? That's such a weird thing.
Because YouTube recommendations is kind of wild.
Okay, tell me what you... So what did YouTube tell you? Or what did you interpret from the data of my YouTube?
Okay, a lot of what you said is accurate.
Yep.
And then some of it, it's like, where you're calling it intellectual and interested in a wide range of topics, I could see where you're going with your self-description.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like, okay, no, but who does it actually think you are?
Okay. Oh,
so,
as
do you see
in,
what
like,
I mean?
if you had to extract the data from it and build an actual prototype, an avatar, who would that person?
That's interesting. I don't think YouTube is going black queer woman.
Oh, interesting.
For you, okay? Because, so here's what I saw. That I think YouTube thinks you're a right-wing white man. I'm sorry, but I do think it's true. And the reason
what, you think,
is...
You think that I am a white...
No. I know what I'm saying is when I reflected on the data, I had cause to question. Oh my God, could you imagine? I had cause to question, like, who does YouTube think I'm married to? Because it was like, can I expose you?
Yeah, expose me.
Obviously, we did something recently on Tommy Robinson, but like between Jordan Peterson, Tommy Robinson, Andrew Tate...
I don't watch Andrew Tate.
Endless Trump... You don't watch Andrew Tate?
I don't watch Andrew Tate.
Well, it was coming up in the recommendations.
No, do you know what it was? I watched a documentary by Channel 4 on Andrew Tate. Oh. But I don't even know if he even has a show or anything.
Okay.
I definitely don't watch Andrew Tate.
I don't know that either.
Yeah.
But maybe I was just like, does YouTube think you're like a little incel white boy?
Wow. Wow.
But then it was super weird.
I do understand where that's coming from though. And I think I have a thought on why it thinks that.
Okay, why?
But carry on. I think continue with the analysis.
I want your theory. But yeah, so it felt like YouTube was telling me you're a little white teenage boy who has a fascination.
You just said I was a right-wing white man.
Or
why have I been...
Right, okay, so either of them. Maybe you're on the pathway to right-wing white man. But right now you're a teenage boy.
Oh, God.
Who really does love watching shaggy dogs get groomed by that woman that you just referred to.
Oh, yeah, she's brilliant.
Also, you have a ridiculous side interest in like ASMR Korean cake videos.
Oh, I love those. Oh, the bakeries.
The bakeries where you just...
That's an old thing. I haven't watched a lot of those recently. But yeah, I love the Korean bakeries.
Okay, well...
They are skilled at baking.
That's true.
Those bakeries.
Also, you love lo-fi, by the way.
I adore
lo-fi music.
Lo-fi. It gets me through client work.
That and scenic, picturesque landscapes that play in the background. You also like those.
That's more when people visit us. I'll put them on in the background.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it's just nice for it to be there on the screen rather than just a black box.
I did, in my panic in the night, think, did I marry a survivalist? Because
you did.
They were all... Actually, I shouldn't. I did.
You did.
Okay, tell me. Because like literally there's you. Yeah, I don't know if you're like a survivalist or a person with escape fantasies, but what I know is you want to live in a tiny cabin in Portugal.
Not a tiny
Norway. One. Okay, fine, a big one or a tiny one. In a forest somewhere generally, or a mountain.
Yeah.
In Portugal, Norway. Sweden.
Or even in Botswana.
Yeah, you do have African ones occasionally, but which I found very hard to reconcile with the fact that you're an incel white man who's right wing.
Yeah.
So I was just, your algorithm was very interesting.
It is very interesting. I'm a multifaceted person.
You are. Now tell me your theory about...
As a person who works in the entertainment space, and specifically the bulk of my work is in documentary. So investigative, documentary, historical... type things is what I make, right? Whether that's for podcasts, so the audio space, or for TV or film,
Yeah.
right? I'm often collecting stories about people's lived realities in a particular socio-political and economic context, right? And so I often have to understand where they're coming from, but also the world in which those stories emanate. So if you're telling me something about your life, like, you know, I grew up in 1980s South London, I need to understand what was going on in South East London at that time in the 80s. So what were the social conditions, the economic conditions, the political conditions that would have had an impact on your life and story? And I might be able to pull out things from that moment to give additional context and texture and tone to the story. Does that make sense? So as a result, when I watch things, I try to make sure that I'm not in an echo chamber. I want to understand everything, the left wing, the right wing, the centrist, because I want to be informed about what's going on in society and the world as a whole as much as I possibly can, because it's fuel for story ideas. It's a fuel for questions that I might want to ask a particular contributor. It's fuel for the directions I might want to take a particular story. Do you see what I mean? So there's that side of things. I think there's another side to it as well, which is that growing up, I was so controlled. You will toe the party line.
Yeah.
You will follow the rules of this church, which I said before, governed every aspect of my life. And if I had stayed in there to adulthood, they would have told me who to marry.
Yeah.
They would have told me, you know, how it's just all of these things. And so because it was so restrictive and so controlling, and you weren't allowed to question, you weren't allowed to explore anything outside of the confines of that faith. Having left that group, that community, I have a strong resistance to anyone or anything telling me what to think, how to think, what I can or can't listen to or not listen to or interact with. Does that make sense?
Completely.
So I'm like, I think by nature, I would consider myself quite left-leaning as a person, but I resist the left telling me that I shouldn't listen to somebody just because they've said that that person is a demon and a bad person because they're right-wing, or they've assumed that they're right-wing and they've put them in this box as a person not to be listened to, because it's exactly what my church did.
Yeah.
Don't listen to those people. They're sinners. Those people are in the world. They're secular. They're going to hell. So don't listen to them. Only listen to what the pastor says. Meanwhile, that same pastor is stealing money, committing adultery, being abusive. But I just have to listen to him, but not listen to someone else who maybe has something good and useful to say. So I have quite a strong resistance. So that might be what you're experiencing when you're seeing my YouTube, is those two parts of me.
That's super interesting.
That felt like a really long response.
No, but I like it. And also this has come up before in our relationship, because I remember very early in our relationship when we were still, you know, when relationships were in a testy phase where everyone's figuring out. I remember realizing that there was almost what felt to me like a rebelliousness and a refusal to conform.
Yes.
And we talked through it at various points, and I realized that, a lot of the time, if you're pushing back on something, you're trying to figure out if you can be free with me.
Yeah.
Because you have been so curtailed. And I can see why you would move through the world resistant to any attempts to curtail, like including by the left, which you say you may have more leanings towards, right? So that is interesting. But I think it gives me another question now, hearing your explanation, new data, which is, I get what you're saying. You do all this stuff for your work to understand story, to understand how people think, to not live in an echo chamber as well for yourself. But what I don't see or haven't seen is a similar, it's almost like in an attempt to be away from the echo chamber. I don't see lots from like Black women, which is interesting because you're self-professed, maybe you already are that, so you don't feel you need to look for it, but you're self-professed narrative, and a lot of the work we do is about that.
Yeah.
And so those voices are there. So it makes me wonder, is that because your YouTube consumption has become so driven by your work activities that you're always looking for a story for something to do with your work? Or is it you don't, like, what are the, I mean, I have several hypotheses in my head, but why do you think I haven't seen those recommendations?
Do you know, that's such a brilliant question, a very good question. I honestly believe that the reason for that is that I'm already Black, I'm already queer, I'm a woman. I kind of know what's, I don't know, I don't, this is going to sound maybe slightly conceited actually saying this, but I kind of feel like I already know what it is to be a Black queer woman. I don't know that I want to listen to that. I kind of want to hear new things. I want to see what the other side is saying. I want to explore my other hobbies and interests, which is, you know, renovating stuff. I don't always want to sit in the space. This is going to sound really horrible, but I don't always want to sit in a space of maybe feeling like a victim or hearing the same stories over and over again, or I don't know. I think that's what it is. And that is going to sound really awful. And I know some people are going to not be happy that I have said that, but that's how I feel. When I watch someone renovating a home in Portugal, that's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's new techniques, it's design, it's building, it's things that I really like to do. You know, when I am watching the woman grooming, for example, that's just escape. I don't have to think with that one. There's no thinking there. I don't have to grapple with anything. I don't have to wrestle with anything. And when I'm listening to the guys who are, I guess you could say they're more on the right, even though a lot of them aren't, they've been labeled that way because of the views that they hold, then it's almost like trying to, again, understand, stimulate my mind on a level that stretch my mind, alternative viewpoints, you know, some of which make me go, the fuck are you saying? Like, you know, and it makes me angry. And then I'm like, I want to know, why do you think that way? And then it spurs me on to do other research and think about things differently in a way that, I don't know, like I feel like I'm already aligned with the Black queer women.
That is so fascinating to me, because you've just described yourself as a Black queer woman who has all these interests that people might not associate with womanhood or Blackness or queerness, like building tiny houses, not that we don't have them, but it almost suggests to me that you feel that any other Black woman's voice you're going to hear out there is going to be pigeonholed, which is what does happen,
which is what happens,
into telling a certain kind of victim story. But surely there must be other Black women out there who are like you and who want to talk about a whole range of other things.
Well, who are they? Let me know who they are and I'll watch them.
I'm not.
No, I'm not even saying that to you. I'm saying that actually in general, like even to our audience, like if you have recommendations of Black women who are doing something outside of, you know, activism or their queerness as their central thing that they talk about, who are maybe like C. Jane Drill is a YouTube channel, Black woman. I'm pretty sure she's queer. She's giving like peak dyke. And she's brilliant at renovations. I learned so much from her. She's called C. Jane Drill. She's a Black woman. So they must exist.
So again, it's raising even more questions for me. It's like, you seem frustrated about that, and yet we've built a whole show around us also being Black queer women inhabiting.
Know.
So why are we doing that?
I don't know. We should start a vlog where we go and get a tiny house in Portugal and renovate it, because that would be really fun to me.
Oh, I'd happily do that. That's not an issue. But I am talking about things I find interesting. Yeah. And I think it's, anyway, I was just curious about that, why, and why not? I mean, you've explained, I guess you've given me an answer for why you don't find your freedom there. You don't find enjoyment there. You don't want to hear a story. You want to be stretched, is what you're saying. And you feel like you're stretched more by these other people, which I also find interesting, because I feel like when you listen to the people who are tagged as right wing, who are white men, they're there. But even your left voices are often white men, working class men.
Yeah, like Gary Stevenson, whom I like a lot. He's the economics guy who made his money.
Exactly. I find that interesting.
I listen to Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO.
I would say he's quite centrist, centre-left maybe.
Yeah, centre-left, but it's still not.
It's still a lot of men.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I don't
No,
know.
I think
I'm genuinely
you're right.
curious.
Yeah.
I just, well, one of my hypotheses is the algorithm and the recommendations suggested if you were to look at the content as a reflection of the identity of the person, you might well think the person who owned that profile was a white man.
That makes sense.
So if you were to look at it, you might think that they were a white man.
Yes.
So there are many reasons. You've explained your rationale, but another piece of it could be that the algorithm mutually, it reinforces in a compounding way what you search for.
So you think that I'm actually in an echo chamber, but a different echo chamber?
Oh, I wasn't going to say echo chamber because I find that whole narrative a bit interesting anyway for other reasons. But what I was going to say is the algorithm is mutually, it just reinforces a lot. Once it sort of builds a life of its own, and then that starts to be what pops up. And so you tend to hear more and more of those voices, not necessarily even by what you're doing. And so to give examples based on what I've seen in my own algorithm, I feel like I once searched one thing about being intersex on YouTube, not because I am, but because I wanted to understand, or I clicked on a video that popped up. And from that day, no joke, I watched one video about someone's experience of being intersex, and I get... The algorithm thinks I'm intersex at this point. It's like, how do you navigate the world as an intersex person? And what is the genetic this and this? And then adjacent to that, you get all sorts of genetic, what they call disorders, as if it's a disorder, but things that veer outside the norm that most people experience. And so I'm suddenly getting all these videos off clicking on a video once. Another one on my Instagram. My Instagram, all it does constantly is show me pictures of women who've gone through bariatric surgery, because I knew one person who went through it and I wanted to understand their experience more in terms of support. And also because I have been trying to focus on my health and therefore making certain changes in my own life, like having a trainer. All I get is all these god-awful before and after pictures and videos. And I'm just like, at this point, I've reported some of those things. Show me less of this, show me less of this. And they just keep coming back. So
you know what's so interesting? Because you referenced my profile on YouTube.
Yeah.
But what I found on Instagram, because obviously I was away from Instagram for a long time. Then I came back onto Instagram because of our show, because we were promoting and launching the show. But what I found with my algorithm on Instagram is it's just black, gay, everything.
Really?
Everything's black, gay, everything. That's all it shows me.
Why?
Don't know.
Do you think that's also because I might have been... It connects to your II Studios profile?
No, it's my Instagram, my name, my personal Instagram. And it's literally just black, gay, everything. Black, LGBTQ plus everything.
Again, so then now you start combining algorithms.
So if you
imagine I merged your
I'm a
Instagram.
mixed race, centrist, non-binary person. If you combine the two platforms.
I was even thinking about the range of things. So again, it shows like maybe we're accessing different kinds of information from different platforms.
Well, that's it, because for me, YouTube is primarily a source of learning and understanding. With Instagram, I'm just using it as a source of entertainment and passing time and scrolling. So there, I guess I might be indulging more of who I am, whereas on YouTube, it's more of the work that I'm doing.
It's true.
It's a source of I'm trying to learn something. I'm trying to learn, like, even with the renovations, I'm watching. Yes, I'm enjoying what you're doing, particularly if you've got a good personality, but mostly I'm learning about your techniques.
Yeah.
What tools you use. Why are you doing that strategy? Oh my God, I can't believe you did that. That's beautiful design. I like how you did that. Same thing even with the groomer girl. I know that sounds really odd, but it's the way she interacts with the pets, and she has like all these tools, like really good tools for everything. She has like a little squirty, like a duck shaped squirty thing where you put the soap in that bit, and then she kind of squirts. I find it really fascinating.
That
and then
makes
of course
a lot
it's
of sense.
dogs.
I always know when you're on Instagram because all I hear is you cackling from the other room. So I feel like Instagram is your platform to depress you and to make you laugh. Like, it makes you feel all the feels, right? Like, it's there where I know you've been scrolling and watching these little comedy reels and this, that, the other.
By all my favourite Nigerian comedians, because I've got so many on Instagram that I love, from Beverly Daisy. Like, there's so many. And that's where do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there, everything is blackety black, black, black. black.
It's true. It's true. It's true. On YouTube, you're a white man. On Instagram, you're a black gay woman fiend.
Yes.
Who knew?
Who knew?
I feel like I've solved it. Okay, I don't know if I can do that delineation, but I don't know what I use YouTube for. Barely anything other than our show, really. I don't really watch
you
it.
don't. You actually don't.
No, I don't. And apparently I use it to figure out if I'm intersex. And Instagram thinks I'm a black Muslim, black womanist theologian all at the same time, apparently.
That makes sense.
And
I feel like that's pretty much who you are, except the Muslim part. But
but
you work with Muslims and you do research.
I don't know, but it thinks that I am a black Muslim and Christian woman at the same time. And what else does it think? Who desperately wants to lose weight and who's recently undergone bariatric surgery.
Even though
it also thinks I'm Jamaican. It constantly sends me videos that are clearly targeted at Jamaican audiences from that guy who
Julie Mango.
it's the guy who does whimsy dancing. But that makes sense because I like
whimsical.
dance. Yes, him. But also I get all the Jamaican stuff, people being told off by a Jamaican uncle because they're falling off a mountain and they need rescuing.
Macho.
I mean, whatever. I'm sure it thinks I'm lots of other things, but those are the main ones.
Okay.
Also, I'm gay.
That's
well.
correct.
That's true, but it's just reconciling it with
That's very true. The algorithm got one thing right.
Okay, so that's who the algorithm thinks we are. Very curious to know from anyone listening or watching, what and who does the algorithm think you are? You have a thing to bring.
Yes, I do.
Tell me what it is.
So I've been reading a book by a woman called Magatte Wade. She is an entrepreneur and she is Senegalese, so she's from West Africa. Senegal is a French-speaking African nation. And she, in the book, which is called The Heart of a Cheetah, she talks about businesses and free trade being really important for this next phase of Africa's development, if that makes sense.
Economic development.
Economic development, absolutely. It's a really interesting book. She has some really interesting theories. And alongside that, in the last few months, there's a man, one of the richest men in the world, who's Nigerian. He's called Dangote.
Oh, yeah.
And he has built Nigeria's first oil refinery. Now, on the surface, that sounds like, what?
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And the reason why it's a huge deal is that Nigeria is one of the top oil producing countries of crude oil, but it doesn't refine it into the various products that we use
day to day,
right? So as a result, although it's a very large oil producing nation, it actually imports a lot of its refined petroleum products.
So they sell the oil unrefined to the West,
which is cheap because it's the raw product.
Yes.
Right? So it's a bit like, if I sell you like a log of wood, that's going to be cheaper than the furniture that you make from the log of wood.
Sure. But also it's cheap because colonialism decided it should be called cheap so they could pillage it so that they could sell it back to us. So there is a whole economy to how that thing works as well.
There is, but one thing I will say is that we do have our governments, and our governments do have a responsibility, and other nations have managed to get themselves to a position where they are able to sell high luxury goods, refined goods, and so on and so forth. So it's not outside our remit to be able to do that.
No,
but I do understand where you're coming from.
And I understand your point too.
So Nigeria has to buy back the refined version of the product that it sells in its raw version.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? And then, of course, on top of that, there's so much corruption when it comes to oil. So many environments have been destabilized, destroyed, lives lost because of this
commodity,
the black gold, the black gold of the earth, right? So I think in this segment, I kind of want to explore some of Magatte Wade's book and some of the things that she speaks on around Africa really rising up through business and entrepreneurialism. And then, of course, Dangote being a bit of an example of that and how that will hopefully shift the balance in Africa. Because his refinery has the capacity to produce 650,000 barrels per day, which is more than enough to supply all of what Nigeria needs and then some. So we can also export the refined product.
Wow.
That's a monumental shift if we can get it right. And I think that's the key, is whether our governments...
not operational yet? When
it is operational.
Okay.
Yeah, but it hasn't reached full capacity yet.
Got it.
Because remember, it's a new oil refinery, so it will take some time for it to get there.
Okay.
So it's exciting times. I'm really hoping that the Nigerian government and whoever, the cabals, because lots of people who don't want that to happen for a number of reasons, because they've been doing very well, doing their little deals on the side.
Sure have.
You know? And so I imagine he said it took him 5 years to get that up and running, not because of just the building of the thing, but because of all of the people, the mafias and the cabals and the politics wanting it to not happen because of the money they get through all of their backhanded deals.
Yeah, I can absolutely believe that. So how, do you know much about how he managed it over those 5 years, or any of the specifics about what he faced?
He spoke about it in an interview, but it sounded like there were a lot of payments that had to be made. It sounded like he had to change the way that, so also there was like a lack of access to the things you need to build an oil refinery. So you're having to go to other countries to get certain bits of machinery and things like that. That also holds things up. Yeah. We often take for granted in this country that we have access to so many things to help us build whatever it is we want to build. Yeah. Whereas that wasn't the case. Remember, this is the first oil refinery in Nigeria. Yeah. So there were a lot of technical problems, a lot of political problems, and a lot of legal problems as well.
And is Dangote a private businessman? Or?
He is.
Okay, and how does he talk about this? Does he talk about it as a social purpose vehicle? Does he, what's his vision for this thing and why it was needed?
I mean, he's a businessman, first and foremost. So Aliko Dangote, that's his name. Yeah. He is from the north of Nigeria, and he made his start in food, so trading in food. And then the business that made him the kind of wealthy businessman that we know of today is cement. Okay. And then he now has like the Dangote group, and now a part of that is the oil refinery.
So what do you think it will mean? You started talking about like economic development in Africa. What do you think it will mean for Nigeria if he's successful in this vision?
Well, on paper, us having our own oil refinery should mean that prices should go down and we should have better availability of petrol, of petrol products, petroleum products in Nigeria. That's what it should be on paper. Nigeria being what Nigeria is, I don't know if that will happen. Even him getting to 650,000 barrels a day, how soon he gets there, we don't know. I want him to be successful, and I want it to have that effect of reducing the price of petrol and increasing the availability of petroleum products for us. I want it to be that we export to other African nations, because it would also mean that things are cheaper for them as well, as opposed to us getting our oil from God knows where outside of the continent.
And presumably the carbon footprint and the environmental implications of having a natural resource from one context taken to another to be refined, to be brought back.
It's ridiculous.
Just wild.
It's wild. This should be a good benefit for both the people and the climate. Obviously, we don't know
oil
the extraction.
In itself.
I was going to say the extraction of the oil.
A lot of leaps I had to do there.
Yeah. The extraction of the oil from the ground causes its own problems, and we don't know what. Well, we do know that there are some nefarious things that happen there, and there's a lot of damage to the environment that happens there. But as long as we're reliant on petrol products, then that's one of the good things that we can hope for from this refinery.
Yeah, super interesting. And how does this link back to Magatte Wade's philosophy or economic development position? What is she saying, that we need to keep business, those kinds of decisions in the hands of businessmen and entrepreneurs in Africa? And
what she's saying is that Africa's freedom lies at the feet of businesses and entrepreneurs, as opposed to the socialist models that became all the rage during post-independence. So, the likes of, Kwame Nkrumah, a lot of the African Americans who were coming across, they were all talking like Marxist philosophy and socialist philosophy and so on, right? And she said
many of our heroes are independence heroes.
Precisely, where she goes into the reality of what that did to Africa. And actually it didn't help Africa at all, because if it had, we wouldn't be where we are.
Right.
And so she gives a lot of examples. So one of the things that she says in the book is that in Senegal, it has some of the most restrictive laws around employees on paper, but not in actuality. So that means that on paper, there's loads of red tape, loads of bureaucracy, loads of legality to starting a business and employing people. That means that the only people who can get through all of that bureaucracy and all of that red tape are massive French multinationals.
Oh, I see, because it takes so much cost, labor, time to wade your way through
lawyers, money, all of that stuff, right? To start a business. So that means that the biggest businesses are actually French multinationals who are often going in, extracting and taking it back to Europe. And only 5% of businesses in Senegal are actually legally operating.
Yeah. So that's super interesting because, as you know, like a lot of the heroes are independence heroes in Africa I've kind of read about, and I've definitely been shaped by those kind of more socialist, sometimes communist, collectivist somehow narratives about economic development. But what you're saying reminds me of two things. I don't know if you remember it, but a little while ago, you shared with me an Instagram reel by Michael Behane.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
From Techish Pod.
Yes, exactly. And POC in Tech, I think, as well. He also runs that.
Yeah.
And it was the story of the first Prime Minister of Singapore after it split from Malaysia, and talked about how reading the autobiography of that first Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, had really challenged him as someone who was left-leaning, because the policies that they pursued were completely counter to everything he's been told, right?
Okay, yeah.
So they did three things. This guy went and made English the official language, which, like, all the arguments had been against cultural imperialism, reclaiming indigenous languages and so on. He completely stamped down on corruption, which I think everybody would agree with, but that also meant doing things like keeping friends, people he knew, imprisoned, even against their protestations and appeals to his generosity. He built multi-ethnic quotas into housing. So within the housing system, he didn't want to have what he called ethnic enclaves, where people stayed together. You know, a lot of post-independence movements have all been Pan-African and Africans for and by Africans, as if we don't have loads of difference within us. But you know what I mean? Like very much more inward looking or whatever. He was like the opposite. We do not want people to become inward looking. So I'm going to make sure that a spread of every ethnic group that exists here has to live in every apartment complex. And he made that a policy issue, which you could say is a kind of social engineering or mixing, right? And then on top of that, he implemented one of what he calls the most brutal forms of capitalism, right? This is Michael Behane's take on it. He had no minimum wage, so workers' rights were like poor. But what he did ensure was that the government provided housing. So there was like a social housing component to it. And he literally took Singapore's GDP from an equivalent to what Kenya was to to a leading economy status. And
I mean,
Michael
it's one of
Bahane
the
was
best in the world.
Yeah.
Singapore has the strongest, if not the strongest passport in the world.
and the economy there and the things you hear about the social system there. My cousins lived there for a while, and so I heard all these things about it. I was just like, okay, he was saying this completely challenged him, and hearing the story, I was like, okay, super interesting. And it also takes me back to another thing, which is, I mentioned the second thing, which is that years ago, when I was studying my master's, I took a module on development studies in Africa that was run by this really quite radical lecturer at SOAS. One of the books that he gave us to read was by a South Korean economist and academic called Ha-Joon Chang. And he wrote this book called Kicking Away the Ladder. And the basic argument of the book was Western nations, countries, institutions are telling the developing world that they should follow things like democracy, human rights, certain kinds of economic policies in order to build their wealth and become sustainable economies, and follow all of these rules. But these are rules that have all been made long after those Western powers have secured their wealth via the most awful means. Brutal means, yes. Right? So he says the argument is basically you're kicking away the ladder that you guys used to climb.
Exactly.
In this stage. Now, I think it's a really, I struggle with these arguments because, okay, no, workers' rights, we're going to pretend that entrepreneurship is going to save us all, and capitalism, like a lot of it just will produce self-interest, frankly. And I feel like I've been around enough of the people who run businesses like that. However, I think it's pretty hard to deny that that's partly, that is what's going on.
That is what's going on.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not,
Yeah.
that is exactly what's going on. Because one of the things that Magatte Wade said in her book, she kind of says, she does this thing with her students where she asks them a series of questions. I might as well do it with you now.
Oh, yeah.
The first question she asks is, what is poverty?
I'm a sociologist, so I'm probably the worst person.
Try not to complicate it, honey.
Okay, I'll try. Poverty is the inability for me to afford the basic things that ensure your survival or flourishing in this world.
So in a system that's based on money, fiat currency, it's a lack of money, right? Because that's what gets you the things that you need in our system.
I would say money is absolutely central to that, but that you can have a poverty of well-being or flourishing. I don't think you can get to that without money.
But yeah, exactly. So if you have money, you can access well-being, you can access so many things.
You have a better chance of,
I think so, because even when I think about my trajectory through life, my life is definitely better because I have a business and I have more disposable income, which gives me more choice.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's one of the first.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, right. Then she goes, where does money come from?
It's a social construct. It's about how we value certain things, whether it's resources that then get sold.
Okay.
Do you want me to be less academic?
No. I like all of it. I like it because it's a good way to approach this, I think, because it gives it a bit more like flavor and a bit more dynamism. But where do you get your money from?
The labor that I perform.
Right. So it's from your jobs, right? Yeah. So money comes from jobs.
Yeah.
Then the next question is, where do jobs come from?
Okay, I see where we're going here. So jobs come from employers and organizations that provide jobs. Yeah,
so businesses for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, some of the students say what you say, well, there's organizations that aren't businesses, like governmental organizations and so on. So then she says, well, government and non-profit jobs come from the taxes that businesses pay.
Yeah.
So either way, you're still coming back to that core that business is the foundation. And the other thing that she says, which I love, because very often we think of like the free trade and the so-called markets in quotes. When we talk about markets in a European context, we're kind of talking about like stock markets and the economic marketplace. We've kind of been conditioned to believe that when we talk about free trade and the markets, that is a European thing. Mm-hmm. And she's like,
it's never been. We've always had trade.
We've always had
free trade.
We've always had free trade. We've always had markets, and African women have always been at the center of that.
Yeah.
dominating and dictating the movement and the shaping of those markets. My grandma was one of those. So we talk about that in one of the episodes, right, about money, and how my grandma was essentially a Nana Benz.
Yeah,
You know?
no, for
she
real.
was a powerful woman who made her money in textiles and catering. Was a mover and shaker, moved in the highest echelons of society. So, you know, it shouldn't be alien to us as African people, that free trade, and that the core of the core of a society is the markets.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think it is alien to anybody who is on the continent and lives there. I think people who live in the harshest of conditions in Africa all know they survive by trade, by free trade, by labor, by skills, or whatever. It's when you take that discussion and put it in the West that people start to act like we don't already know that.
And she talks about that. So she talks about the shock for her when she arrived in America of trying to do business in Africa, but with American capital and selling African products into an American market. Yeah. She immediately encountered this resistance, which is that in the hearts, the minds and the words of the white liberals, which is that for them, Africa is a continent in need of saving and saviorism.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the only Africa they can understand is the one where they go over there to build wells, fund orphanages.
Yeah.
They can't
build hospitals, basic infrastructure.
They can't envision an Africa that has its own agency, its own markets, its free trade, and governs itself as it wants to govern itself with its own money.
Its own sovereignty,
its
basically.
own sovereignty.
Yeah.
And that's what she encounters. So that book that she's talking about is an exploration of all of these tricky, complicated threads that ultimately are leading to Africa being what it is. And so she's saying a new path forward is to embrace free trade, embrace the markets, embrace African entrepreneurialism. Some of these laws that have caused us to not be able to move the way the French multinationals or the English multinationals can should be removed so that Africans can take their place as entrepreneurs in African society.
Yeah, so it's really a critique of neocolonialism and the way that colonialism is sustained and those big corporations continue to dominate the continent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but I think some people push back and say it's not that simple. That if we do that, then it will lead to, I guess, what we've seen in like places like China and Singapore, where, you know, no minimum wage, sweatshops and exploitation and so on and so forth. And that's a valid criticism. But what I am saying is that the past hasn't worked for Africa. It hasn't. And there has to be a new way forward. And I'm very interested in what she puts forward in her book.
Okay. Well, I will have to check it out.
Yes.
And more importantly, this is reminding me of the myriad other people I would love us to have on the show.
I want her on the show.
Oh, she'd be great. But even closer
She's a fire woman
in our network.
Yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Remember we had the conversation about money, episode 5, I think it was.
Yes.
One of the conversations and tensions in a lot of the community wealth building work I've been doing in the Black community has been that there are some people in the Black community who really feel like the tools of capitalism and entrepreneurship are the way forward for us. And we can no longer do kind of community social investment type models, right?
Yeah. And we can't be shamed out of it. I feel like sometimes the white liberal space wants to shame us out of wanting our own agency and having our businesses and making money and doing great things.
There's that. Like, I don't really care about the white liberals, if I'm completely honest, but I'm more interested in other Black people who really don't believe that is the way forward.
True.
And so I would love to bring into conversation some of the people that I'm talking to in my working life right now.
That'd be good, especially if we get one on each side.
Oh, we can get more than one on each side, and I wouldn't want it to be just, I think we need a multitude of voices thinking and talking about this issue.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's a really interesting set of questions that Magatte Wade asks her students, and definitely hearing them put like that, I'm like, yeah, she's kind of got a point. But I think the bigger point that we tend to wrestle with thinking about economics of Africa or Black communities is like, yes, but what is the other world we imagine being possible? It seems just to accept that those are the only ways of doing things.
Yes.
And I'm personally very conscious that there are feminists in Latin America, there are feminists on the continent of Africa who are all trying to look at ways that flourishing and economic development is looked at beyond the lens of GDP, profit, productivity, and all of these very masculine frames that have been used, and also considers flourishing, like, because those models have been built off invisible labor by women in the home.
Yeah.
And they are detrimental. They've also like been exploitative of workers, etc. So I do think that is a question that still needs reckoning with.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it'd be a much more, whatever that thing is, I think it would be more just and more equitable. So that's Magatte Wade. So definitely check out her book, The Heart of a Cheetah. I heard something about true crime.
Yes. So this final section, it was in fact came into being before we ever started recording this podcast. But we were in a meeting at Audible UK HQ, if you remember.
Yes.
And in that meeting, we were exploring our original IP and our slate of ideas and whether any of them were a fit for Audible's current commissioning priorities, which include quite a lot of focus on true crime.
Yes.
So in the midst of this meeting, we started throwing out some
wellness and true crime.
Wellness and true crime,
a
which
bit
is
of a mad one.
Woo! But in the middle of this meeting, we started throwing out ideas that we've had around true crime, things that have happened in, say, Botswana that have never been picked up, or televised in this kind of genre, or just we have a whole bunch of ideas on that area. Yeah. But also we got talking about some of our own experiences and how we felt about true crime as a genre.
Yes.
Do you remember this?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So in that meeting, Duncan, who's one of the commissioning execs at Audible, ended up telling us something about true crime. Now, up until this moment, I've always, as you know, I have a bit of an obsession with true crime.
You absolutely do. In fact, we need to talk about your algorithm on Netflix as pertains to true crime, because that's why I go on your half of Netflix. I press that Tamanda profile button.
It's bad.
And it is terrifying. All I see is American murder, the slaughter of Danny, triple homicide.
I know.
I'm just like, it's death, disaster, and mayhem on your side. My side is not like that.
It's not. And I have to, the reason, I don't know.
I could, based on your algorithm on Netflix, assume that you're a serial killer.
That is, you're not wrong.
A white male serial killer.
That's true. That is fair based on how I read your algorithm.
Thank you.
I feel so awkward about this in the same way that I did when we were having this conversation at Audible, because I, for years, kind of held my interest in true crime as a dirty secret. And I felt kind of ashamed about it because I feel like it's, brutality against women primarily in these stories.
I know.
Being turned into entertainment. However, talking with the team at Audible that day, I confessed to something, which is that my interest in crime...
Not Audible as a confessional.
It was bad. Anyway, my interest in true crime has always been there, so I'm not going to erase and whitewash history. Mm-hmm. However, I did notice a significant uptake in my consumption of true crime after I myself had been through a really terrible, coercive, manipulative relationship. I can honestly say I had never come across in my life. What happened was I then started consuming true crime stories to try and make sense of this character type. And what I realized that it was in so many of the stories of the women, it's like there's a playbook out there that these kind of almost psychopathic or sadistic or narcissistic characters seem to read and follow.
Yeah.
And so there was something I found so almost comforting and soothing about being able to watch the stories of other women and go, oh my God, I'm not the only one. It wasn't just me. I didn't do something stupid. I'm not just, naive or dumb for not seeing it coming. There are certain people who behave in a certain way. And so this is what I was saying to the guys at Audible, that like I do feel like part of the reason there's an obsession with it is many women must be in a position like mine.
Absolutely, because that's what the data says as well, is that it's mostly women. The viewership of true crime skews female.
100%. And then what I found so affirming and relieving is that Duncan, who was in the room that day, sent me an article about exactly this phenomenon and said it was fine if we can talk about it on the show.
Oh, perfect.
So I'm going to get the article because I want you to know what it says.
Okay.
Basically, this was a Vanity Fair article that had been done on true crime as a phenomenon.
Okay.
And it basically tracked something called CrimeCon. So a bit like a Comic-Con.
Oh, like a conference type.
Convention.
Thing.
Yeah. There's basically something called CrimeCon, founded by a guy called Kevin Balfe, as a place where victims can, quote, feel loved, right? In the face of, unspeakable brutality, going back to patriarchy, which we talked about last episode.
Because predominantly the perpetrators tend to be male, predominantly.
And the people who come to CrimeCon apparently are predominantly female. So in this Vanity Fair article, they go into this huge gender disparity at CrimeCon and men's versus women's responses to the whole convention.
Okay.
So the journalist says that there were men at CrimeCon who, through his conversations, he felt had come under duress by the women in their lives. And
for them to learn.
Well, just that the women wanted to go and then they were then accompanying them. It wasn't even that kind of explicit.
Okay.
But when this journalist was asking them about how they were finding the conference, they were saying they found the whole thing like very weird. One of the men who was there said that they felt literally nauseated by having to listen to all these stories of true crime. And in contrast, the women at the convention said, well, I wonder if the reason this is predominantly attended by women is because so many of us are the victims. One person said, we have to deal with creeps 24/7. Even when we were children, we were dealing with that.
Oh, yes. That needs to be talked about.
1,000%. And then there was this one woman, Molly, at the conference who said all of the stuff that, she'd seen happening at this convention, she's like, it can happen to you. So you have to be aware and you have to be vigilant, and information is knowledge. So basically...
So true crime gives you the tools to ensure that you don't end up in the position that those women were in.
Exactly.
With those perpetrators.
Precisely. And when I tell you that reading this article, it was so weird because I felt such a weird shame and something about my interest in true crime, but I found
it almost feels perverse. Like,
yes.
Why am I watching just brutality towards these women?
And I don't experience myself watching it as entertainment as well. I experience myself as seeking validation, affirmation, and a sense that I'm not alone.
Because I found that, you listened to that podcast Betrayal, which you talked about on one of our previous episodes.
Yeah,
one of the things I find is that when you finished a particularly poignant episode or one that links to something you've gone through, is you come away from it and your takeaway is, that happened to me but this is how it's different, and she did this and I can see exactly why she responded in that way, because actually I found myself responding in exactly the same way to that person at that time because of this thing. I've noticed that you do that.
Have I said that to you?
Yes, you draw parallels between what you're listening to and your own personal experience. I've noticed it.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
It's been a few times.
My experience is that I look at it to go, I'm not stupid, I'm not alone, but also here's what I can look out for. Here's how I can protect myself.
Do you know what's so interesting? In a world that won't listen to women and won't see what they're going through and won't validate what they're going through, it's interesting that true crime gives to women what society and our justice system won't give to women.
Wow. That is nail on head. That is the thing. Where else are you going to get the validation? I have myself been the witness in a court case for a friend who was sexually abused as a young person, where the perpetrator was convicted, which is very rare, given how often this happens. And despite that justice through the system, the whole process felt like having yourself not be believed, your testimony ripped to shreds, and basically you being made a criminal. And yet, when these true crime things are done well, you feel seen.
Yeah.
Which is what I love about Betrayal podcast. It is one of my favorites. I think the sensitivity and trauma-informed approach that they take to gathering the stories of people who've been through these horrendous issues and then relaying them in a way that's sensitive and helpful. And then not only that, building community around these women and allowing them space to connect with each other, to be in dialogue with each other, to share wisdom, knowledge, and advice is truly something that we should be looking at in order to make great content in that space if we're going to be doing it.
That's crazy. Who would have thought that true crime and CrimeCon would be exactly what women need in order to be seen, heard, and valued?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Duncan, for sharing that article, because it really did help me make sense of something I was kind of struggling with, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll struggle no more.
I shall not.
And I will not be horrified by your side of the Netflix profile, of the Netflix account.
Thank you. I shall continue watching as long as I need to. Thank you. That's all I have to say on that.
That's all from us today on Rigor and Flow.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us. Please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below to let us know what you think.
And don't forget to share with your friends. It really helps us to reach more people.
Yeah. Catch you next time.